There was a language spoken in those homes that had nothing to do with words. It lived in the tightening of a jaw, the slow crossing of arms, the way a mother could freeze you mid-step with just her eyes. In the kitchens of 1970s black households, where linoleum floors remembered every footfall and walls absorbed every raised voice, children learned to read silence like scripture. You knew when you had crossed a line, not because it was explained to you, but because the air itself changed, became thicker, harder to breathe. Your grandmother didn't need to say your full name. She just had to look at you over her reading glasses, and suddenly you remembered every rule you'd ever been taught, every boundary you'd been warned not to test. The rules were iron. Be home before the streetlights hum to life. Don't talk back. Don't slouch in church. Don't let anyone outside these walls see you act like you weren't raised right. Keep your voice down. Keep your head up. Don't cry where they can see you. These weren't suggestions. They were survival instructions passed down like heirlooms, polished by generations who knew what happened to black children who forgot themselves in a world that was always watching, always waiting for an excuse. Mothers moved through their days carrying an exhaustion that went deeper than bone, enforcing standards that seemed merciless, because mercy, they believed, would get you killed. Sunday mornings meant starched collars and patent leather shoes that pinched. It meant sitting still in wooden pews for hours while the preacher's voice rolled over you like thunder, while the organ moaned, while the women in their wide-brimmed hats swayed and hummed. You didn't fidget. You didn't pass notes. You didn't even think about complaining, because church wasn't just about God. It was about showing the world that you were disciplined, that you had people who cared enough to make you sit still and listen. After service, there would be the ritual of greeting elders, of looking them in the eye, of saying, "Yes, ma'am," and "No, sir," with the kind of respect that made your parents nod with quiet approval. This was the performance of dignity in a society that denied it at every turn. Dinner tables were stages for another kind of theatre. You ate what was put in front of you without complaint, even if it was the same beans and rice you'd had 3 nights running. You asked to be excused. You cleared your plate and washed it without being told twice. Conversations happened around you. Adult talk about bills, about somebody getting laid off, about a cousin who got stopped by police and didn't come home the same. And you learned to listen without appearing to absorb the weight of the world you were inheriting. Your father's silence was its own language. He could sit at the head of that table, jaw working slowly on food he barely tasted. And you understood that his sternness wasn't about you at all. It was about the factory that ground him down daily, the landlord who looked through him like glass, the constant calculation of how to keep his family fed and safe in a country that had never promised him either. The neighborhood itself was a classroom with harsh lessons. When the streetlights came on, that was your curfew. Not because your parents were arbitrary, but because they knew what happened in the dark to children who wandered. They knew about the ones who didn't come home, the ones whose names became whispered warnings. So when you tested that boundary, when you stayed out 15 minutes too long, the consequence wasn't just punishment. It was your mother's fear converted into fury, her love expressed through a belt or a switch or a hand that moved faster than explanations. She didn't have time to parent gently. Gentleness, she learned, was a luxury afforded to children who lived in safer worlds. Years later, when you have your own children, and the world has shifted in ways both profound and superficial, you'll find yourself remembering those iron rules with something other than resentment. you'll understand that every harsh word was a prayer, every strict boundary a shield. They were preparing you for a marathon you didn't know you were running, teaching you to carry yourself with a dignity that couldn't be stripped away by slurs or systems designed to diminish you. That sternness, that refusal to let you be soft or careless or loud in the wrong places, was their way of armoring you for battles they couldn't fight on your behalf. It wasn't perfect. It left scars. But it also kept you alive, kept you moving, kept you standing when the world pushed back. And now, when you close your eyes, you can still see your grandmother's face, stern and beautiful, and you finally recognize it for what it always was. Love in its most fierce and uncompromising form, doing whatever it took to see you survive.